So Krypton, we were just talking about, it is the culmination of many years of nerddom that could only exist now. I think all the foundation that sci-fi has built in their decade plus of this format and where nerd culture is. When you guys came to this project, you're both already in the nerd zeitgeist. What was it like reading that script for the very first time?
Oh, it was so exciting. I think, you know, we were sort of saying with the success of shows like the Flash and Arrow and stuff like that, we had an opportunity to do something that was kind of different. And I think it was really bold. Like from the beginning, we knew that we were telling a story of an Elseworlds. You know, this is an alternate timeline. That's a super bold idea. It was nothing that had really been done on TV before. So to be a part of that was really exciting.
Yeah, and I think because of the evolution of the nerddom, as you say, I think the public are open to prequel. They're open to new legends, new stories, and from the point of view of Zod and the characters we'll discuss later, they haven't actually met them at this level before. So this is a really exciting time, I think, to be exploring the dark side.
You guys are both two sides of a very similar coin in that your character is a legacy character in who he represents as a house, and your character has been a legacy character like Terrence Stamp has played in Michael Shannon. So you're both known, but in such different ways. Was it intimidating stepping in shoes that had never been stepped in quite the way, or had been stepped in so thoroughly in such different ways? Was it interesting approaching these characters because of the legacy they bring to the table?
I think it's a wonderful thing. Of course, there's the added pressure there because it's Superman, and Superman is a character who means so much to millions of people, and I've always been a fan. He's meant so much to me personally, so of course you don't want to let anyone down, but that's also a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. Superman is a great thing. So it's all about doing justice to that. And for me, the joy was trying to find the areas where Seg is different. Like Seg isn't the finished package. You know, he has to grow to be a hero. All of season 1 for him was about trying to understand who he was and what his role was in this world. And at the end of that season, he finally figures it out at sort of the last minute. And he's on that journey, but he doesn't have to be Superman. He sort of just thinks of himself as a guy. Like the cool thing about that character was I got to make it my own. Very often when you're stepping into these roles, you're stepping into the shoes of a legacy where there have been other actors and stuff like that. But for me, I got to see the wonderful work of Christopher Reeve and Henry Cavill and Tom Welling and actors like that, and borrow that, but also one of my main inspirations for it was Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones. You know, so I really got to create a character that was completely my own, as well as play, you know, as well as pay tribute to what's come before.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
And for myself, when I first went up for the job, I went up for a guy who was called Man with Dark Hair. So thankfully, I didn't know I was going up for Zod, because that would have been intimidating. Then once you got the ethos or the core of the character with the way they wrote the scenes for me to learn, you realize the duplicitous and the Machiavellian element of the character they wanted me to play. Then we got to the actual recording, you realize you are General Zod. And then you go, well, they've written this backstory, this history, this scenario so clearly. And the fact that I know the history, we talk about this, the fact I know what's coming informs everything I'm doing now. So this is all a surprise, this love stuff with my dad and my mum, which was a bit of a surprise. But I have a core role, which is to stop that annihilation. And the debate now between us is how do we do that, you know? And I think we're two sides of the same coin with our love of Krypton. But yeah, it's lovely to explore this character.
What I love about it, the show in general, is we were talking before about how it balances the villain and the hero in almost equal measure. It's so important to have the villain work for the hero to work, and I think that's the evolution of where comics are now, like with Kingpin and Daredevil, and these shows where you're very invested in both. Having that foundation before you actually really knew who he was, what were some of the choices you decided about him before they gave you like all the backstory and work? Like, who is he to you, and then interpreting that for the screen?
Well, the universe works in mysterious ways, and one of the things that I did just before embarking on this role was I actually had to do the Paradise Lost for the British Library. So, and I played the Satan character. So I went off and really studied it, and really studied it, and came away and just thought, fantastic, thank you so much. Because I saw the Superman figure as an angel. I saw it differently. I saw myself as a fallen angel. So I took that as my sort of my legend. And then you're into an interesting thing because you're talking about pride and hubris. And I was born the day after God, so I'm angry about that. Why the hell do you think, you know, why are you the man and I'm not the man? So you have that's going on in your character, which will distort your decisions. Just so you know that, you know, if you allow those things to get to that emotion, you forget things. And this is where having Seg-El, Leiter, the family, I'm starting to work out what potentially went wrong with me. I don't know if Zod really wanted to know. You know, he was happy in his ignorance, but unfortunately I'm not allowed to sort of dwell in that anymore. So it becomes complex.
I love the idea of Zod as a fallen angel. It beautifully mirrors all the biblical parallels of Superman, but at an earlier stage. And I think that's one of the strengths of the show is it lets you play with mythology without breaking mythology or saying an Elseworld. We're getting characters in this show I never thought we'd see in the big screen, much less a serialized screen.
Yeah.
Every week I get to like Lobo's here, Brainiac's here. What is going on? When you first saw these characters fully formed, what was the craziest moment of like, guys, are you wearing Doomsday's here today? Like, what was that process like on set?
Well, the cool thing is now it's like Doomsday's practical.
Yeah.
No, we have a CGI Doomsday when he's in action. He's a CGI, but there's a puppet, and it's amazing. It breathes, it emotes, it's huge. Doomsday is real, and that's the most incredible thing. I remember seeing that puppet breathe for the first time, and it's an animatronic, but it's terrifying. It really is terrifying. Yeah. And for us, like, it's something that we're so proud to do. This show was devised as a way into the DC cosmic universe to introduce more characters like Brainiac and Lobo and Adam Strange and characters like that. So for us to be able to debut these characters, and particularly Brainiac, we took from the Jeff Johns and Gary Frank run, and that was the main inspiration for our Brainiac, and to come up with our interpretation of these characters and do them justice on the screen, that it means everything to us.
And you see Blake Ritson just
oh yeah,
loving it, and then you see the FX and the makeup department, and the commitment from the whole crew. I mean, we're the acting department, and we take that very seriously. We behave and we train and we work and we get to set quick. We just are a disciplined group because we're working with some of the best in the business. So we all have to put our heart and soul into it. Yeah. And then you see Doomsday, and there's a scene where I have a scene with him without going into too much detail. I ask him a question, which is quite a moving question, and you see his chest move. And it really moved me, actually. I was like, that's the level we're at. And that's the stuff I'm interested in. As big as that, what's the thing that moves you about? Why? Because there is no... It's like Frankenstein, it's Mary Shelley, it's so many literal things, there is no monster. It was just a creature. It was the way in which he was treated that made him a monster. That's the whole point of science fiction for me. And as the mother of it, I think we're alluding to that.
The wonderful thing about all of it and all of these characters is that we don't really think of it as heroes and villains. They're all incredibly motivated to do the things that they do. And one of the things I loved about Zod in season 1 was how much Seg respected him, and how much Seg was constantly on the back foot, and he was constantly in crisis as a character. He really had no agency or choice over being a hero. He kind of just had to be there. And all of a sudden he meets this man who is strong and brave and has a plan and knows exactly what he's doing and tells him the truth. Adam Strange lied. Adam Strange didn't tell him that Krypton was going to be destroyed. And all of a sudden there's someone here said, yes, your grandson was my enemy. I never took pleasure in that. All I've ever wanted to do was save this planet. And it's true. He's not lying. And so Seg goes into season 2 knowing that there is a good man in there, and that maybe their ideal, there are parts of it that can meet up. There can be a middle ground. And all of those scenes that we have together are so wonderfully loaded, not only because Seg, like Superman, is constantly trying to save everyone, even his enemies, but also because it's his son, and he believes truly that there is good in him.
One of the things that's so hard about Superman for me as a character is humanizing him. And I think that's one of the strengths of the character when he's written well is you're seeing the humanity in something so removed from humanity. Yeah. I never thought we'd see the humanity of Superman by way of Seg-El and Zod. And I think that's the strength of the show, amongst many. But when, as comic book fans, you heard about the concept of this show, how did that alter your perspective of Superman now that you're part of the thing that makes him human to us?
Yeah. I mean, it's an honor. This is something that's absolutely massive. It's Superman. He's one of the greatest icons in all of fiction, and as I said before, someone who means a great deal to so many people. And there are so many fantastic storytellers and artists who've worked within this legacy. So for us to be here now and doing our best to leave it better than we found it, it's a real honor.
I look forward to darkening him. I realize that I have a position in the future coming. We can do things. So if this insufferable being does appear, You know, but it's just really interesting. We can really, no, he's not insufferable at all, but there's elements of that humanity you talk about that where I'm like, okay, so what's the best thing I can do? Well, I would just let him know that. I don't need him, because I respect the humanity and the goodness and the justness of your character, of that line now. And it sort of changes the DNA a bit, well, literally. It's changed my DNA. So therefore, I'm part of his family now. So it's like, okay, maybe I'll just toughen him up a bit.
Yeah.
Take those glasses off.
There is that wonderful...
That's the reveal moment.
And I'm a completely different person.
I'm not talking about
who is this?
I wasn't talking about you.
Well, hang on a second. I'm back, everyone.
Okay,
yeah.
Cameron's back.
Sorry.
It's fine. Okay, I was confused for a moment.
I wouldn't tell you, Father.
There is that wonderful thing of they're constantly trying to get the other to see their side. That if there's one person that Zod could convert, it would be Seg if he could choose. And if there's one person that Seg could save, he would want it to be Zod. You know, and that's such a wonderful, loaded relationship.
Absolutely.
So with you both being comic book fans, and actually for you specifically, you've been in the world of this for a while. Punisher Warzone, you work on Arrow, and you've seen this growth from the inside. What's it like to see, a Shazam movie in real life? Like to see a $2 billion Avengers Endgame, but having been there when Punisher Warzone was, a $10 million budget. Like this growth in the culture. How's that been from the inside?
Well, I think doing Alien Predator, and seeing the alien and seeing the 21 puppeteers with the mother alien, and you see the sort of the machinations of the practical puppet world, and then you realize the special effects and the technology that has improved over the last 20 years, where we can be doing this now within the TV world. It's really heartening, because what I saw was a thread of commitment to this literature, to this genre, that was never ever weakened, really. And Paul Anderson, for example, when we did Resident Evil, he didn't CGI. He trained all the zombies to walk. They had a choreographer come in, so you really had that sort of connection with them. And there were certain people within my management team and agents at that time, like, why on earth would you want to get involved in that stuff? And I'm like, well, I see it as the progress. This is the progression of literature. And they were like, you're mad. And then people would say, these young people are playing computer games, and and it's just a waste of time. And I'm saying, how many people does it take? They should be reading books. And I said, well, how many computer games have you played? And these guys all backed off. And I said, okay. So how many people does it take to write a book? You have a writer, an editor, and a little team. This is a collaborative effort of everybody putting something in. So how can you be so negative about this art form? It would shut them up.
It's always baffled me, because comics are literally literature plus art.
Yeah,
and those are two things that separately were like, that's so adult and mature. And then as soon as you put them together, like, kid stuff. It's fascinating to see, like, we're taking these shows so seriously. This is a Shakespearean effort. This is a profound drama. And I think that's a testament to where we are as a society. We were talking before, like, we used to hide our Spider-Man shirts.
Totally.
We used to pretend we weren't as nerdy as we were. And now it is the biggest industry in the world. As a fan, now as part of it, like going from Comic-Con as a fan to Comic-Con as a piece of it. What's that like for you?
It's a joy, like, because the thing is, I used to get bullied for it, and it was the kind of thing that I used to, it's not cool to like comic books. And now, whenever I go to Comic-Con, there are hundreds of people who care what I think about comic books. And that's one of the reasons why I love going, is I actually genuinely get to share my love of this thing. And that's why I think Comic-Con is such a special place and a special time, is that, it's superheroes and pop culture and all that sort of stuff, but for a lot of people, this is something that they feel that they have to hide, that they love this thing. And for one weekend in San Diego, everyone gets together and they meet like-minded people and they celebrate this thing that they love. And it's something that brings people together and makes people feel less alone. Absolutely. And that's immensely important.
Yeah, and it's been nourishing people for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
These stories are nourishing. We are looking at the archetypes of our society. If we were talking about Greek myth, nobody would look at it in any sort of negative sense.
Yeah.
But we discussed the Aeneid,
the
we talk
Odyssey.
about the Odyssey. We talk about that stuff on set. That's underpinning a lot of this stuff. And I feel in the world we're in now, I think it's so mad, but the bottom line is, and I think Comic-Con totally explores it, but we stand alone together. This is what we do. We have to be down these channels, but we have that commonality and universality, which is extraordinary. And then I see who was looking at these games, and I see how diverse the cast can be in this world of science fiction and fantasy, where I don't see that with respect to the history and to the costume dramas of that isn't the world. This is my world. Thank you so much, universe, and Jeff John and all the people and all the greats, because this is a great genre.
This is modern mythology, and it truly belongs to everyone. That is the strength of the genre of comic books to me, is that comic books are all about reinvention and finding a new interpretation and giving, especially young storytellers and new storytellers, a chance with these fantastic characters who've been around for a long time.
I totally agree. I mean, it's young, it's a hero's journey, it's all these great archetypes, but it's translatable. So you walk down the street and you see a Superman brand, you instantly are like, that's one of my people. You feel this kinship, this culture. And I think that Comic-Con is this rare hub. How many other cultures have a place where everyone gathers once a year? How many other? And I think that particularly the show, it modernizes it while looking to the past, and that's such a hard balance to walk. When you found out the extent of it being a prequel and the concern about prequels, were you concerned as actors with the fan reaction to doing something about Superman without Superman?
I think, look, I'm a fan too, and I saw the announcement. I was thinking, really? And Superman's grandfather, that'll never fly. But then I saw what they wanted to. I saw what they wanted to do with it, and it's that thing of, we're taking a real risk here. This show is not what people expect it to be, and that's what we wanted to deliver.
Absolutely.
And I think you always want to give people a shot, and I think that there is some healthy cynicism in this industry and in fandom, but give storytellers a shot, because I think by and large they want to take those risks, especially with these characters that are so beloved, because reinvention is the key to these stories. And like the New 52, for example, in DC Comics, not all of it worked, but The Court of Owls was an absolutely spectacular story.
Yeah, modern classic.
I think a lot of the stuff that Grant Morrison did in his Action Comics run was brilliant. And there are little bits of, and even if it doesn't work out, at least you get to see that it doesn't work out. And so for us, we took a big swing, and thankfully for us, it's paid off, and people are coming with us on this journey, which we are immensely thankful for.
Yeah, very grateful.
Because at the end of the day, it's all about the fans, but you got to be willing to take that risk, and for the fans, hopefully they're willing to let us take a shot, and they have.
It has, yeah. It's going well. I mean, and it shows, and the relationship with the fans is there. We were talking before about how like the CW actors are some of the kindest people to the fans. Every actor I've met that's a superhero stays a superhero for the fans, and I really appreciate that, because it's so important that kids keep their heroes. What would your, as people in the comic space, like gateway drug comic be? I know we were talking about Tim Drake, Robin. Like, what would you recommend people get into if they aren't in the world of comics?
It depends, and we were saying before, comics, there's so much continuity, there's so much story, and it can be a little intimidating.
Sure.
The first thing I would recommend is find those characters that you like, whether it's Batman or Superman or Green Lantern, whatever it is, and go down to your local comic book shop, because by and large, I think that nerd fandom is really welcoming. It's a really welcoming community, and start conversations, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and maybe you're really into a Justice League story or a really big superhero fiction, in which case I'd recommend something like Batman Hush. But maybe you're into something that's much more grounded, in which case I'd say Year One. There is a comic book out there for everyone. I fully believe that. But for me, the gateway was the animated series. I was a child of the 90s. I grew up with the Bruce Timm, Andrea Romano animated series, and Superman and Batman. So I had a cursory knowledge of who they were. But the comic that really made me a comic fan was Jeff Johns' Teen Titan run.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was the thing that made me realize how connected this universe is, and how much it depends on the emotional relationships between these characters. And to see people like Tim Drake being like, I don't know if I want to be Batman, but also I don't know if I'm as cool as Nightwing, and to see what they think about each other and how they feel about each other, and them trying to find their place in this world. That was the thing that opened up the whole DC universe for me.
Did you happen to read the Tom King's Heroes in Crisis? It's ongoing. The arcs were talking about, like, the blips of the Robins, talking about the other Robins.
Yeah, they're all sort of insecure,
reflecting in the other Robins.
That was an amazing. I think Tom King writes some of the best dialogue in comics for sure. But that story, as someone who has mental health, struggles every now and again, that was a really, really important story, and I think it was a fantastic story.
I think it's one of the most important comics on the shelves right now, and I think DC, like Doomsday Clock, the Heroes in Crisis, Tom King doing Phantasm, bringing the Phantasm in, like,
oh yeah,
good God, is that
so
going to change
cool.
the world?
Yeah, yeah. Well, also he's writing New Gods now with Ava DuVernay. Like, oh my goodness, that's
a
so
theatrical,
cool.
like, experience.
I can't wait to see that.
It went from I literally look forward to that to my like number 3 most anticipated movie that's been announced.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
just
Oh,
the
yeah.
entire swath of filmmaking.
Yeah.
What first brought you into the world of comics? Like, what was your first dabbling?
Bit like Cameron, it's films. It was always film. It was always the TV series, the Batman series, the Dutch, the way we were always in the villain's terrain. It was on a Dutch. But really, I was out there trying to be a superhero most of the time. That was my thing. I just sort of, whenever it got heavy, I just imagined I was that guy. So the Dark Knight Batman's always been somebody special to me, I think. And then seeing the success of the Black Panther movies now, and that you just see this burgeoning, success of the Wonder Woman movie, the success, and how my sons will play female characters without a thought.
Yeah.
And that is progress.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think this genre allows for progress to be not heavy-handed. It's this beautiful genre of like acceptance, and that's the beautiful thing about comics to me is like, hey, look, we're all equal. Let's just be equal.
Yeah, exactly.
And comics do that for us. This show does that. I love that you guys have built a world where Zod is as important as the grandfather of Kal-El, and I love that we get to live in a world where this show exists, and Deadly Class and Syfy and what they're building. So thank you so much for being a part of this very important show and this impossibly important universe. Thank you guys so much for joining me today.
Very kind of you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.